over the years, Bob and Muriel Eklund decided that they should start a summer camp for kids. So they kind of talked over with Mom and Dad decided, well, we'll go in half and half on the equipment and horses, etc., and we'll get this thing on the way. So it was about 1957 or 58 that the Elkana Ranch got started north of Cochrane, and with this summer camp. And during the summer camp, we would take a 3-day trail ride, and we'd end up back where we live now on the Little Red. We'd go back there and camp. So I can actually say that the first time I ever saw the place that I live at, I rode into it on horseback. And over the years, then Eklunds decided that they were going to move to Bragg Creek, and so Elkana Ranch got started down at Bragg Creek, and Mom and Dad bought the ranch back there because it was up for sale, and so we kind of split differences, and Elkana was at Bragg Creek, and we started the Bar J up there in Bighorn. So the ranch that we're on was homesteaded in 1910 by Fullers. Jack Fuller used to be an artist around the area, and he told us lots of different stories about things that had happened back there, and he wrote a book about the area called Red Saddle Blankets, and so that gives quite a history of the area too, and a lot of the things that happened back a long time ago. When we first moved out there was just a few old shacks, and so when we moved out, we had an old 1950 Chev car loaded up like the Beverly Hillbillies, an old Case tractor, and there was hardly any road. It was just a dirt trail, and it was coming in from the east, and there was no road to the south at that time. And we got back in there, and my sister and Mom were in the car, and when Dad and I got there with the tractor, they were in the middle of the river, stopped. They'd hit it too hard and flooded it out, and they had the doors open so that the water could go through and clean the car. And we got the car out of there and got back into where all the old buildings were. Well, first thing we had to do was try and knock the pack racks back enough so that we could spend the night before we could really clean it the next day. We built a lodge starting the next summer there, and that was with the idea of having summer camp in there, and we also lived in it for a few years before we got houses built. And the two guys that were building the lodge, it was built out of logs. The one guy was a stonemason. He was doing the footings, and we had a goat at that time, and he's got all the strings laid out for the forms, and he looks up and this goat is chewing on the strings and pulling them down. So he gets a stick and he's chasing after the goat, mad as could be, and turns around after he chases a goat and trips over the last one himself and breaks it. So everybody thought that was a little bit funny and kind of backfired on him. The logs that we built the lodge out of, Bert King and Dave Sir cut them and hauled them in. Dave Sir, Dad was who owned the place when we bought it, so there was a little bit of a connection there, and Bert King was a good neighbor all through the years. Our first year at camp was a very small year. There was just a handful of kids, and some good friends of ours by the name of Jacobs come out from Calgary and helped us out with the camp. And well, my best friend today is still Gary Jacobs, and you know he's helped out all through the years, and that was how camp started, with basically with my mom and Gary's mom, Bonnie, riding herd and us kids, and kind of got things going that way. Well, with our summer camp program, like I say, when it started out, it was strictly a riding camp, and we rode all day long. But in the beginning years, it seemed like all the kids had a grandfather, an uncle, somebody that was related to the farm. And towards the end, or even in the middle years, we ran camp for 52 years. The kids had lost any contact to the farms, and physically they could not take riding all day long. So we split them into 6 groups. There'd be 3 groups ride in the morning, beginners, intermediates, and advanced, and the same in the afternoon. The ones that rode in the morning today would ride in the afternoon tomorrow, so they weren't all riding at the same time of the day. They got, the benefits of the coolness and the heat of the day, whichever. So they would ride for a couple hours, and that would give them enough saddle sores that they were good for a while. And then we had staff. We had 1 counselor for every 5 kids. So, and then we had to have a head counselor to keep tab of all the counselors. And so we had quite an extensive staff in the summer months. When the kids weren't riding, they were going on hikes, they were swimming in the river, playing games. They kept them busy from morning till night, and I'd say that the kids slept pretty good. They were tired out, and a lot of parents said that they only got about a mile down the road and their kids were asleep in the car, when they come to pick them up. The kids would they'd come for a week. They'd bring them out on a Sunday afternoon and then pick them up Saturday evening. We used to have them coming and going at the same time, but it got too congested, so we'd let the kids go after everything was over on Saturday night, so the only thing they missed out in the week was staying over that one night. And so over the years, it had to the counselors had to bring something new every year to the program, and I can't say enough about staff we had over the years. They kept the thing rolling. It wasn't the Bar J, it was the staff that kept it going. And the Bates Bar J got named, a lot of people think it was from my mom and dad, Barbara and Jack, and we got the bar and the J, but it turned out that Dad worked for the stockyards at that time, and he knew the brand inspectors, and he was looking for a simple brand that would be easy to apply, and it turned out to be a bar over a J. And so that's how the ranch got named, was after our horse brand, the Bar J, and it has been for a lot of years. You always remember the really good kids and the really bad ones, and you remember the bad ones over the good ones. The average kids, they just came through. You don't remember them. My wife, she worked most of the time with the horses and leading kids and looking after that part of it. Well, when we first lived there, it was an improvement district. The Bar J is 25 years older than what the MD is. And over the years, for the first 25 years, we didn't have anything. And it's been the last few years that we got some regulation coming through the MD. The MD was very little involvement with us. A lot of the changes that we got were from the health departments and different government groups. Everything that came along, we had to do upgrades, and it had to be done right away. And we would fix our rates for the summer camp in December, And then if something came up, we were out of pocket for it because we had to make upgrades or we had to change this or that. And they didn't, they weren't prepared to give us any leeway. It had to be done, and we couldn't adjust our costs at that time because everything was preset. That was one of the other reasons, other than health related, that I decided that it was enough too. The government was driving me nuts. All the different things they come up with. And it's hard to do anything. When we first started camp, we didn't even have the power. We had outhouses, and as long as you had outhouses and you didn't have to have all the different things that went. As soon as we put in plumbing, then everything fell into place. I mean, they were all over us with regulations and different things. And there was for a few years, we had to call the inspectors in, like the fire department, to see if everything was okay. And they said, well, we didn't know you were here. I says, well, yeah, we've been here for quite a few years. Well, we'll be here from now on. And a few years later, we'd phone them and tell them to come back and inspect it. And I think that was the worst thing we ever did, let them know that we were there. And like I say, the first year that we had camp, we had the creek, and we had a bathhouse in there. It was basically sheets of plywood around and on stilts so that you get in the water and you could wash down. It was okay until high water coming in, you had to go chasing the bathhouse. In 2012, I decided that it was getting too big and too much for me to look after. I'd had a few health challenges, and so I mentioned to my wife that we should sell out and kind of cut back a little bit, and she wasn't in favor of that. And that year she had to gather the horses, and after riding for a week gathering horses, she said, she says, it's too big. We need to cut back. So we decided in 2012 that we would quit the summer camp business, which had built up over the years from, like I said, a handful to we were having 75 kids a week coming in. So it turned out it was quite a chore for the summer. So we put the place up for sale, and in 2012, in September, we had a horse sale. We sold about 150 horses and all of our tack, and it was kind of a sad day, but it had to happen, and we just have to look back and keep going ahead. So in 2015, we actually sold our buildings and everything and have moved to another part of our ranch that we have kept, and we're in the process of building new buildings and continuing to live in the MD of Bighorn.